As the Indian startup ecosystem is growing massively, today India stands strong as the third largest startup economy in the world. While startups are being recognized by government and different stakeholders for their efforts and work, incubation centers cannot be ignored. They are the ones who are actually fostering and nurturing startups across the country. So, to understand the role of incubation centers and how IIT Delhi is playing its part, today we have with us Dr. Anil Wali, who is the MD of FITT at IIT Delhi. Before I really begin with the questions, can you just take us through the journey of FITT at IIT?
So this foundation, which is an independent industrial foundation created by IIT Delhi, had its beginning in the year 1992, which in the Indian context or even global context was quite early, on a sort of leap of faith by the institute to have initiated this program of enabling innovations and technology transfer. And we come specifically to the incubation model. Our incubator had its beginning in the year 1999-2000.
There are many things that all startups carries. But what are the key features that you really look at before qualifying a startup to be incubated at your incubation center?
Okay, in general, startups can initiate their journey anywhere. But when it comes to specific incubator model that we have at IIT Delhi, what we look in the startup is the idea, particularly the technology idea, the intellectual property, or the strength of their proprietary knowledge that they bring onto the table. So that is one part. The second part is what is the business plan that they have in mind, or what is the business model that they are articulating. And thirdly, very importantly, what is the kind of team or who's the innovator or entrepreneur who is initiating this exercise. So I think these three things I would say are very important for us to judge whether the startup can be incubated at our place.
How instrumental has government been in the journey of FITT?
So FITT itself was initiated through initial support from Ministry of MHRD, now it's called Ministry of Education, early on. But when it comes to the incubation as such, so government, I think it's not just our incubator. I think incubators all across. I think the government has been lending a very, very significant helping hand in the beginning. In fact, I would say the government has been primarily responsible for giving a big boost to the incubator movement in the country.
What are the different resources for funds, and once you get the fund, how do you decide to distribute them among the startups who are being incubated here? What are the parameters that you take into consideration?
So while the government has been a big sponsor or supporter of many schemes through which we are able to extend financial help to the startups, lately we see some CSR monies also coming into the picture. When I say CSR, means corporate social responsibility. So many corporates under the CSR, which is now allowed under the CSR Act, and that also serves a useful purpose with us to help the startups. Now, when it comes to supporting the startups, let me make one statement that if your idea, your plan is very good, I think a startup will not be complaining about lack of funds. But if you ask me how we look at the suitability of a startup, yes, it first depends upon whether it's consistent with the scheme guidelines, one. Second, do we see good traction happening if we are able to fund that particular startup, notwithstanding the fact that these grants are very competitive in nature. Well, grant is one model of support, but I think of late we are also in a position to extend some debt or maybe do equity investments in startup companies.
Can you recall a few startups who were being incubated at IIT and are really doing well in the industry now?
Yeah, there are quite a few of them actually, but I think just giving few examples will be perhaps unfair to others. But if you have to, even if I have to give just for the sake of so that people can easily recall, I think maybe I can give some recent names. BotLab, for example, is one recent example of a successful startup. And I think you may be perhaps aware, the BotLab does those drone shows, right? So I think they have been seen I think in many important festivals and events in India. So that is one. We had Critical, one of the early startups, which is still going strong. And also we had a spin-off from that particular startup called Vehant Technologies, whose products and solutions you see at all establishments where you need, for example, at the airports, for example.
We are already the third largest startup economy, as I just mentioned, and we have more than 87,000 startups as per the DPIIT data in country. But sky's the limit. So, what are the things that are in pipeline to make the ecosystem even stronger?
While we started small, but I think with the help of government and other stakeholders, we are scaling it up now. Fortunately, India has always been an entrepreneurial country, and I think today we see a lot of people, young folks, getting into entrepreneurship, or some of them are actually looking at entrepreneurship as an alternate career choice too, which is a good thing. But the question is, I think in a large country like ours, are these numbers enough? Perhaps not. I think we can have. I think there is room for more startups coming in, more incubators coming in. But while the numbers is important, but also at the same time, we have to impart depth to these incubators and the startup ecosystem as a whole, so that if we are, for example, looking at only tech startups, then we need to strengthen the facilities at our incubators so that the startups are able to get all the kind of assistance that they need to develop their products and then go forward to the market after doing the necessary certifications, tests, etc.
We are just few days away from the budget announcement for the next financial year. So, what are your expectations that what government is gonna do for the startups?
I think the SOPs, or I wouldn't say SOPs, the support to the ecosystem should continue, and maybe you never know, the government may have some other interesting programs to offer or come up with, which I think may directly or indirectly help the startup ecosystem. I think we're always hopeful of government. I think for the last several years, we are seeing extremely important steps being taken by the government to help the startup ecosystem. And this time also we are hopeful.
Thank you so much, sir, for such great insight. With this, the startup economy in the world keeps growing, and with the efforts of such incubation centers, the India will soon achieve, the next goal, the next stage, by becoming maybe the second largest or the first largest startup economy.